Good afternoon, everyone. We come into this sacred space to hear stories, to share, to listen, to comfort, to cry, and hopefully to laugh. I'm Rabbi Goldfarb of Temple Beth Ohr. I had the pleasure of getting to know Craig on our Israel trip way back in 2010. I'm also grateful that family members will be speaking this afternoon as part of our ceremony so that we might have the opportunity to share in a more intimate and more personal kind of ceremony this afternoon. Let us take this opportunity to take a look at our cell phones and other devices of communications. Now is a great time to turn them to the off or the silent position so that we might share this time without interruption. At the conclusion of our service here, we of course have a meal that we will share in where we can continue the stories and the fellowship and the opportunity of providing support to all of Craig's family. We are in the process of working some of our tech out, so hang in there. The noise will soon settle itself back down. Hopefully. Kind of reminds me of crickets and cicadas growing up in Ohio. I begin with a simple but meaningful.
I found this on the
It's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't
I begin with a simple but also a meaningful ceremony of lighting a candle. Light is a universal symbol for our spiritual lives, but the candle is so much more than that. It is a fragile flame that we know can go out. We know it doesn't last forever. In light we see, and in light we are seen. And so I kindle this light as a tribute to Craig's memory, which now shines within all of our hearts as that warm light of comfort that we shared when we were with him in his presence. We read in scriptures, Nishmat Adam Ner Adonai, the human soul is the light of God. And we were grateful for the light that Craig brought to our world. You will find the text for this afternoon's service on the projection slide in front of you. You will also find a translation of our final prayer in the wonderful memorial leaflets that you received when you entered our building. I am grateful to our greeters and our ushers for providing assistance. For those of you who parked across the street in the church, we ask please cross at the light. It's a little safer. I know it's a lot shorter going down the stairs, but it's safer the other way at the light. And to members of our sisterhood who have been working together with Jennifer with regards to our meal to follow our ceremony. We are assembled with our friends in the shadow that has fallen on their lives. We raise our voices together in prayer to the source of life, seeking comfort and strength. Who among us has not passed through trials and bereavements? Indeed, some of us still bear fresh wounds in our hearts and feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others whose days of mourning are more remote still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their sorrowing hearts. All things pass. All that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and there comes a time when we must surrender it. We are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. May we come to understand that pain is not your will, O God, and that there weeps with us one who feels our trouble and knows the suffering of our souls. We seek the light that will dispel the darkness that has overtaken us. Let us find it in the love of family and friends, in the sources of healing that are implanted within all the living, in the mind that conquers infirmity and trouble. May we find through your eternal presence the strength to endure what cannot be escaped and the courage to go on without bitterness or despair. We who remember are like artists. Indeed, we are like aerialists on a swinging trapeze, letting go of one rung to catch hold of another. Letting go and holding on, a subtle duality that endows our life with meaning, never denying the past nor foreclosing the future. We are part of the flow of life, the divine process that gives and takes, creates and retains. We too must give and take. We too must seize hold and release. Rabbi Alvin Fine wrote that birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but rather in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. There is a natural law and a rhythm to our world. For every departure, there is also an arrival. It is the law of the axe whose handle was a tree. It is the secret the fire caves in upon whose smoke disappears along its trail. The leaves push off again in a whole fleet of small sails, and no one knows where they land. Children wave from train windows, their years growing heavy on their backs. But somewhere, a cloud is forming that will flower here in petals of snow and light from a star that started towards us 1,000,000 years ago, arrives at last. Let us treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to relieve some suffering, to love and to be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. Help us, O God, to fulfill the promise that is in each of us, and so to conduct ourselves that generations hence it will be true to say of us, the world is better because for a brief space they lived in it. And indeed, our world was indeed made better by Craig's very presence, by his smile, his laughter, his sense of humor, his love of life, his love of family and friends. And we gather to support each other, and especially Craig's family. And it is to the family that I turn to help us paint and weave a blanket of comfort from threads of memories, from stories of Craig's life. We begin first with Lauren.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Lauren Willford, and I am Craig's eldest daughter. I have 1,000,001 really great memories I could share. Like the time he put me in my bathtub with my socks still on. Or the time he dressed up in his tuxedo to perform magic for all my friends at my birthday party. But there's one story that sums up what kind of dad he really was. Both he and Mom were avid readers to both Samantha and myself. One of our favorite books was Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends. One of our favorite poems was Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout. I vividly remember Dad took time out of his workday to come to my elementary school, and we recited the poem together for all of my classmates. I would like to take this opportunity today to read this silly poem once again. Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout would not take the garbage out. She'd scour the pots and scrape the pans, candy the yams and spice the hams. And though her daddy would scream and shout, she simply would not take the garbage out. And so it piled up to the ceiling, coffee grounds, potato peelings, brown bananas, rotten peas, chunks of sour cottage cheese that filled the can and covered the floor. It cracked the windows and blocked the door with bacon rinds, chicken bones, drippy ends of ice cream cones, prune pits, peach pits, orange peels, globby glumps of cold oatmeal, pizza crust and withered greens, soggy beans and tangerines, and crusts of blackburn buttered toast and greasy bits of beefy roast. The garbage rolled on down the hall. It raised the roof. It broke the wall. I mean, greasy napkins, cookie crumbs, globs of gooey bubble gum, cellophane from green bologna, rubbery, blubbery macaroni, peanut butter, caked and dried, curdled milk and crusts of pie, moldy melons, dried up mustard, eggshells mixed with lemon custard, cold French fries and rancid meat, yellow lumps of cream of wheat. At last the garbage reached so high it finally touched the sky, and all the neighbors moved away, and none of her friends would come to play. And finally, Sarah Cynthia Stout said, "Okay, I'll take the garbage out." But then, of course, it was too late. The garbage reached across the state, from New York to the Golden Gate, and there the garbage she did hate. Poor Sarah met an awful fate that I cannot now relate because the hour is much too late. But children, remember Sarah Stout, and always take the garbage out. Love you, Dad.
I can imagine your classmates at that age truly enjoying the pictures described there.
We also used to kind of act it out a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Kind of big flair for drama.
We had to tell the story in a big way. We continue our reminiscence as I invite Jennifer to share words.
I think most of you probably know me, but for those who don't, I'm Jennifer, and I had the honor of being Craig's wife for almost 42 years. I'd like to start by thanking all of you for coming today, and for those of you who are watching us on YouTube. Craig would be so pleased to see all of you this gathering of his family and his friends whom he cherished. I can't even begin to thank all of you who have been so supportive during Craig's 4.5-year journey with bladder cancer. But I would like to just publicly thank a few today. Rabbi Mark, Craig and I appreciated your phone calls more than you will ever know. Craig thought so highly of you and enjoyed the friendship you started during our trip in Israel. We appreciate your checking in on us during his illness and just being a listening ear. I hardly know where to begin to thank Craig's secretary, Blanca Grijalva, who's sitting right behind Samantha there. She happened to be my childhood friend from the time we were 11, and she's my current day friend as well. Several years ago, I played matchmaker when Craig needed a new secretary and Blanca was looking for a job. These two were truly meant for each other. She was an amazing secretary to him, and when he became ill and able to work more than a few hours a day, she managed to keep his office open and running with the help of his colleagues, known by Craig as the probate regulars, as he liked to call them. Blanca, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being there for Craig and for me, and for being an amazing friend when we needed one the most, for keeping Craig's law practice going until we could sell it. It wasn't how he envisioned retiring, but life doesn't always go as it's planned, does it? My nephew Jonathan has always been close to Craig. In the tribute video we're going to show today, you're going to see two little boys with Craig playing chess. The older one is Jonathan. It's one of many chess games they played over Craig's life. They continued playing a few times a week, nearly up until Craig died. Jonathan would call Craig. They would get online and play chess on the computer while they chatted on the phone. Craig so enjoyed these games, even more so after he became ill and then the pandemic struck. Jonathan said his Uncle Craig was one of his best friends, and the feeling was mutual. Jonathan couldn't be with us today as he's spending at least a year in the Czech Republic, but he's joining us on YouTube. Thank you, Jonathan, for taking the time to stop and see us for a few days when you were traveling from San Diego to Europe last summer. Craig was so happy to see you and your mom, my sister Jackie. And last but certainly not least, my twin, Karen Bunn. She's not actually my twin, she's my cousin, but we were born just 3 weeks apart, and we have always called each other our twin because our mothers dressed us alike when we were growing up and we were inseparable. Karen, I could not have made this journey with Craig without you. You were the one who texted me just about every day the first year or two of Craig's illness, and frequently after that. You have always been my rock. And to Pam and John, my cousin Pam and her husband, you couldn't be here today because of COVID, but thank you for wanting to be here and for supporting us with your love and prayers. Craig Dennis Willford was born on November 9th, 1949 in Huntington Park, California, to Sanford Robert Willford, known as Sandy, and Barbara Ann Wilcox. Sandy had been a fighter pilot in World War II, flying a P-38, as he would tell you if you knew him longer than about a minute. Barbara was a homemaker and loved it. They were the typical post-war couple. Sandy was going to school on the GI Bill. They got married while they were in college, but Barbara promptly dropped out when she got pregnant, and they had a baby a year after their marriage. She admitted that she only went to college to find the right kind of man, and she did. Judy Christine, known as Chris, was born in October of 1947 and was Craig's older sister. Another sister, Carol Jean, would be born in June of 1953. So Craig grew up as the middle child and the only boy. His mother told me he was the easiest child to raise of the three. When Craig was 4, the family moved to Whittier. Now, anyone who knew Craig well knows that he did not like change. Once having moved to Whittier, he didn't ever intend to leave. His family did move to a bigger house from the starter house they had first bought after his dad graduated from law school, but the family stayed in Whittier. He graduated from Whittier High School, class of 1967, and he has classmates here today from that class. Craig did leave to go to UC Santa Barbara and spent 2 years in Los Angeles when he began law school, but he came back to Whittier as soon as he could. He started his law practice in December of 1975, at first working out of his dad's law office in Los Angeles, but quickly moving into the Whittier Square building on Penn Street, where he remained. He changed suites there a few times, but remained in the building. When we needed to move to a bigger house when we had our first baby and couldn't find a house in Whittier because of a very hot housing market, he told people we had moved over the border. By that, he meant La Habra. I rolled my eyes and told him he made it sound like we had moved to Mexico. But Jennifer, it isn't just the city border, it's the county border too, he said. Yes, our new house was literally 3 houses inside of the Orange County border. Oddly enough, once we moved to New Hampshire to be closer to our daughters, he loved it. He thought the snowy winter was, quote, too short. Craig disliked change so much that he not only ate at the same restaurant every weekday, he ate the same meal. His clients would track him down at Rick's In-N-Out. The first 15 years, he ate a burger and fries. When he gained a whole 5 pounds after 15 years, he cut out the fries. When the 5 pounds didn't go away, he switched to a turkey sandwich. The cashier would call in his order as he came in the door. He would grab the chessboard from behind the counter and set up a game to play with the owner, Rick Tavis, who is with us here today, along with his wife, Marilyn. I don't know how they've stayed in business since Craig is no longer eating there, but they have, or whoever else was around. Craig served his community. He was a member of the Whittier Host Lions Club for many years, serving as president in 1989 to 90. He was also an active member of the Whittier Bar Association, serving a year as president. He was captain of a Sea Explorer post, teaching sailing to young men and women ages 14 to 20. Craig and I met in June of 1979. I was still in college and working part-time as a secretary for a financial planner. My employer had just moved in our office into the Whittier Square building, just next door to Craig's office. One day after work, I was standing in the hall chatting with one of the secretaries I had become friendly with, who also worked on our floor. Up walks Craig, who also knows this mutual friend. They exchange greetings, and then Craig presses the elevator button to go down. The door opens, and he looks at me and says, "Are you heading down?" I hadn't intended to leave quite yet, but this good-looking guy was holding the elevator for me, so hey, why not? I climbed on, and he introduced himself. I told him my name and commented, "Oh, you're the attorney next door to my employer," and suggested maybe they had business interests in common, and suggested he come over and meet my very nice boss sometime. He said that was a great idea, and he would. About a week later, Craig strolls into my office. I explained to him my employer wasn't there. Craig turns a few shades of red and says he isn't there to speak to him, but to me. Somehow he found out that my employer, and specifically I, had done some contract work for his brother-in-law's company. The woman I'd been in contact with was going out on medical leave, and Craig's sister and brother-in-law wanted to treat her to an evening out at the Magic Castle. Craig wanted to know if I would be his date for the evening. Craig was a magician member of Magic Castle. I'd never heard of it at the time, but Craig explained it, and it sounded like fun. I said I'd love to go. Craig went from looking nervous to looking relieved. Then on his way out the door, he stopped and turned around and said, "You are 21, aren't you?" I replied, "Well, I'll be 21 the week after." He then told me he was sorry, but that I couldn't go because the castle didn't admit anyone under 21. And to be fair, they did card me till I was 30. I later found out he took someone else He had dated a few times in high school. Fortunately, after this date, he remembered why they only had a few days in high school. He later said he never would have asked me out if he had known I was so young, as he was almost 30. But then he felt obligated to ask me again since he'd asked me once. Gee, thanks, Craig. Fortunately, our next date went well. Our first date was August 4th, 1979, and we were married by November 17th of that year. A whirlwind romance, to be sure. Just a second. Our first daughter, Lauren Elizabeth, was born on July 7, 1986. Samantha Lee on August 22nd, 1990. Craig loved being a father, and he hadn't been so sure about that because he used to call himself child-free, not childless. But boy, he loved being a father. He was patient and caring, always ready to change a diaper or play with a toddler. He took offense when people praised him for babysitting his children. You can't babysit your own children, he told them. As the girls grew up, he stayed involved, tutoring them in math, chemistry, physics, and being active in band boosters. He said being a father was the best thing he ever did. We were extra blessed when our son-in-law, Mason, joined the family. We could not have chosen a better spouse for our daughter, and he has been a pillar of strength, love, and helpfulness during this difficult time. Craig loved him dearly. Craig had a number of hobbies. He enjoyed woodworking, sailing, astronomy, and magic. When he was 15, his family had taken a trip to Hawaii to await the arrival of their friend, Sharon Seitz, who was the first woman to sail solo from the mainland to Hawaii. The Trans-Pacific race was being held at the same time, and the owners wanted their boats back, while many of the crews wanted to stay and party in Hawaii. Craig, age 15, and an experienced sailor, saw an opportunity. He convinced his parents to leave him in Hawaii with family friends while the rest of the family returned home. He went up and down the docks looking for someone, wanting a crew member to sail back to the mainland. Sure enough, he found his opportunity. He spent a little over 3 weeks sailing back from Hawaii with people he didn't even know. I couldn't have done that as a parent, I'll tell you. Fortunately, all went well, and he had the time of his life. This was the first of many travels. Craig and I went to all 50 states, a childhood goal of mine, visiting Alaska after he'd gotten sick in September of 2018 as our last state. He visited 31 countries, some more than once. He saw, besides the sights of all of Western Europe, Stonehenge, which he really wanted to see, Machu Picchu with his father, the Galapagos Islands, the Great Wall of China, the Terracotta Warriors, the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, St. Catherine's Palace, Peterhof in Russia. We saw the Himalayas at dawn, flying over Mount Everest, the Taj Mahal, the Western Wall of China, the Western Wall in Israel. We took a balloon ride at dawn over Cappadocia in Turkey. We saw the Blue Mosque in Turkey. We rode elephants together in both India and in Africa. We saw the five species in Africa as well. And we just about got blown off our feet at the Cape of Good Hope at the tip of South Africa. Craig designed and built his own telescope, a 10-inch Richesfield. He loved sharing his knowledge of the universe with others. He taught classes for mentally gifted minors at Rio Hondo College and he worked as a docent for many years at the Rio Hondo Observatory. He was also a member of an astronomy club that would have events with telescopes out on sidewalks for the public to look through. A lifelong goal for Craig was to see a total eclipse of the sun, which he accomplished when we traveled as a family in 2017 to Blodgett, Oregon. Blink, you miss it. To the home of my aunt and cousin, Nancy Dimmitt and Julie Tomlin. What an amazing time we had, thanks to their hospitality and Craig's ability to share his telescope and knowledge with the family, neighbors, and strangers who pulled off the side of the road to join us. As I mentioned, Craig was a member of the Magic Castle for many years. We not only had our first date there, but went many times over the years. We had our final visit on our way up to Oregon with our family. Our daughters had only been once as very small children at the Sunday brunch when the under 21 crowd were allowed. We had Lauren, Samantha, and Mason with us. Craig was sick by then, so we knew our time was limited. It felt as though we had come full circle from our first date many years before. Craig was originally expected to live about a year after his diagnosis, and he made it 4.5 years. He died 2 days short of his 72nd birthday and 10 days short of our 42nd anniversary. He continually amazed the doctors and nurses with his positive attitude, his straightforward attitude about his disease, and his inquiring mind. Craig had a great sense of humor that his healthcare professionals often remarked on. We made each other laugh every day. As Craig would say, sometimes he even made me laugh intentionally. We are incredibly thankful for every healthcare worker that played a part in keeping Craig alive as long as they did. Every researcher and graduate student who worked on the science to formulate the medications that contributed to his survival, and the hospice nurses and aides who made him comfortable at the end. Craig made an impact on almost everyone he met. The many cards we received afterwards described him much the same way. He was intelligent, compassionate, and thoughtful. But the word used most often to describe Craig was kind. We definitely need more kindness in the world. As a tribute to him, I urge you to go out and do something kind this week, and the week after that, and the week after that. Make it a habit. Be kind like Craig.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for sharing so much of your life with Craig. So many of the things you spoke about came out during our Israel trip as well. His love of wife and of life, absolutely. His sense of humor, his love of wine. We did some wine tasting, bought some bottles of wine. We drank wine in various places in Israel. Indeed, he even came here to Temple. We had him come do a wine tasting and an opportunity to teach us about some of the wines that he was an expert in. And his love of the stars inspired me. I also got a telescope, not quite as fancy as his, but have taken it and have stared at the marvels of the planets. I remember on one of the phone calls, I told him I was looking at the planet Jupiter, and my first thought was, oh my God, I've got a crack in my mirror. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. And he said, yes, those moons, right? I'm going, yeah, absolutely. The moons of Jupiter had all lined up, and so there's these line of dots running right along Jupiter, and I'm thinking, oh man, I haven't had it that long, and I broke it already. He was very reassuring and very excited to tell me of the various sights that he has also seen. His telescope, much more sophisticated, looking into galaxies far away and all kinds of star clusters. Impressive. We continue our stories as I invite Dr. Samantha to join us.
Hi, so I am Craig's younger daughter, as he would always introduce me to people. He also, once I got my medical degree, did really like to brag that he had a daughter who was a doctor. And I was even the kind that helped people, because he was also a doctor. He had a Juris Doctorate, but the joke was that he was not the kind of doctor that helped people. So for me, there are two stories that really just describe my dad. The first was when my sister and I were teenagers. My sister played the flute all 4 years of high school. And my dad was, of course, the sort who was always going to be there to help his kids, however. There was one year where Lauren and I overlapped at the school. And so I got to enjoy the privilege as well. My dad would games. He would show up directly from work, still wearing his suit and tie. He would take the coat off, though, and sell raffle tickets. But he didn't just go around a football game bleachers in his suit selling raffle tickets. He had to yell louder than anyone else selling anything. Lauren, do you remember what he would say? 50-50. Exactly like that. Well, everyone in the school knew who my dad was. Now, at the age of 13, that was highly embarrassing, of having your dad in a suit at a football game, yelling so loud that everyone could not fail to notice him. As an adult, I realized how incredibly lucky I was to have a dad who was always there and would embarrass himself and come straight from work to be able to help his kids. The second story is more of an everyday occurrence. My family would go out to breakfast on weekends. When we became old enough, my parents would allow us to stay home alone if we wanted to. Well, I was there, again, high school, and then I came back when I was getting my master's degree. So every single weekend morning, I might be sleeping in, and my dad would ask my mom, should I wake Samantha to see if she wants to join us for breakfast? And my mom would always say, don't wake her, she wants to sleep. If I happened to be awake, he would ask me every single weekend morning, do you want to join us for breakfast? And my mom would laugh and say, you know Samantha, she wants her alone time, and she would prefer that we bring her something back. But my dad never failed to ask, because he always said she might change her mind and want to come with us. And every once in a while, I would say yes. And nothing made him happier. He would get this huge big smile on his face, because there was nothing he loved more than spending time with his family. And that was basically my dad.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Samantha. Words from the heart go to the heart. I continue as I invite Mason to share a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good afternoon. My name is Mason. I am the son-in-law that never felt like a son-in-law. I always felt like just part of the family, and much of that was because of the lovingness of Craig, of Jennifer, Samantha, and of course, my wife, Lauren. Craig was many things, and you've heard a lot of those things here today. He was a magician. He was a lawyer. He was a father, a husband, a friend, and so many other wonderful things to many of us here today. But to me, the number one way I would describe Craig is that he was a teacher. And teaching was his love language. It's how you knew he cared, because he taught you something. And he was always excited to share any number of things, whether it be wine or astronomy or math. All of these things were his way of showing he loved you. And so in that spirit of the love language of teaching, I wanted to share with you some of the things that Craig taught me. Number one is to be curious. He was always curious and always ready to learn something new, excited to learn something new today. And I think he woke up every day thinking about, what can I learn? I think that's one of the essential elements of being a good teacher, is having that curiosity and that love of learning. Number two that I learned from Craig, always be clear in your meaning. So for instance, when providing a web address, you always say World Wide Web, just to be really clear about what you're talking about. It's not www, it is World Wide Web. Number three is to be prepared. I learned this from Craig, and I share this with all of you. Whenever you travel, always bring an extension cord. And he did. He always brought in an extension cord, because you never know when you're going to be stuck in a hotel, and that plug that you need to charge your phone is on the other side of the room, but you have an extension cord. The number of times I borrowed that extension cord while traveling with the family, I'm almost embarrassed to say, but now I always travel with one because of that lesson I learned. Lesson number four from Craig. If it's functional, then it's fashionable. Sometimes that means that you tie a rope to your hat and tie the end of that rope to your belt, because on a windy day, you will be the one with the hat and everybody else will have lost theirs. Honestly, every time he went sailing, he had a hat that was tied to his belt because he was sailing. The wind would catch it, it would blow into the water, but he would just pull it right back up. So if it's functional, it's fashionable. Lesson number 5, prioritize time with your loved ones. You've heard multiple stories here today that at the end of the day, you'll remember going to class and reading a poem with your daughter. You'll remember going to the high school football games. You'll remember the travels, those things you'll remember more than any day in the office. And Craig knew that. And last but certainly not least, be yourself. Even if people will laugh or criticize, the only opinion that matters is your own. So be yourself. Now, in the family, we often would compare Craig to different pop culture characters. He was our Clark Griswold from the National Lampoon series. He was our always logical Spock from Star Trek. But for me, the number one character that I always saw in Craig was Mr. Rogers. He was patient, he was kind, and he was always happy to take the time to teach and to learn. And so in that, I have a quote from Mr. Rogers that always makes me think of Craig. Mr. Rogers said, "The thing I remember best about successful people I've met all through the years is their obvious delight in what they're doing. And it seems to have very little to do with worldly success. They just love what they're doing, and they love it in front of others." And whether it was his time with family, his time staring at the stars, Craig loved what he did, and he loved sharing that with all of you. Thank you.
What wonderful words, what wonderful images, what wonderful memories we have shared as we truly pay tribute to a wonderful man, a kind man. And may we draw inspiration from the stories that we have heard, from the memories we shared, and the memories each of you may have as well. We'll invite you during the meal of condolence for those who would like to, if they'd like to share some stories, to be able to do so. We'll have a microphone set up for you, and you can just come and speak your memory of a time that you shared with Craig. the family has worked on and prepared for us an opportunity for us to capture some more of those memories with images. A video has been prepared. And David, if we're ready for that. Wonderful videos, wonderful pictures. We say shalom and not goodbye. For shalom is goodbye and hello and wholeness and peace, all threaded together in one breath. And in one breath, we too say goodbye to a hand to hold, a kiss, a tight embrace. And in the same breath of shalom, we say hello to an ocean of memories, a rush of emotions, gratitude and sorrow, tears and laughter, trembling and fatigue, all in one breath. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember Craig. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember Craig. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember Craig. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember Craig. So long as we live, so too shall Craig live, for he is now a part of us. Merritt Malloy wrote, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words, better than sounds. Look for me. Look for me in the people I've known and the people I've loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." Love is the theme of our first traditional prayer we share. In Hebrew, it is known as the El Malei Rachamim. It speaks of God as a compassionate being, and yet it is a prayer that we share at the most difficult times of our lives. It is a prayer we recite at funerals and at memorial services. But the prayer speaks about this loving deity. And our tradition has put it at a time when we are overcome and overwhelmed with very powerful and painful emotions. Grief, sorrow, sadness, and loss. And yet there's a powerful reminder and lesson here as well. For the opposite of love is not hate. Ask any child, any parent, any spouse, any partner. The opposite of love is apathy. And where there's apathy, there is no grief, there is no loss, there's no pain, there's no suffering. But neither is there any joy or laughter or love. We live in a world blessed with love. Craig possessed that love and shared that with all of his friends and all of his family. And it is because of that love that we have these powerful feelings. And so as a tribute to Craig's memory, to all that he brought to our world, to the love that he lived and exemplified, I invite us to rise as we are able for this prayer. El El Melech Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Amtze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kodeshim Toharim Kezohara Raki Amazirim Et Nishmat Yakirenu V'Yididenu Shehalach La'olamo Began Eden Tehi Menuchato Ana Ba'al Harachamim Hastirehu Beseter Kenefecha Le'olamim Utzvor Bitzvor Achayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach Beshalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Craig Willford, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, may he find refuge in your eternal presence, and there in the shadow of your wings let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May Craig rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Hannah Senesh wrote a poem that is just so appropriate. There are stars up above, so far away. We only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. Craig's memory is just such a light. Zichrono levracha, may Craig's memory be a source of blessing, a source of inspiration, a source of strength and courage to us all. As we conclude with the words of our Kaddish, a traditional prayer within Judaism, it can be found on the leaflet you received in addition to the memory booklet. The prayer itself never mentions the word death or grieving or loss, but it is one that we share at the end of our worship services. It's one that we share at the end of funeral services and memorial services. It begins as a tradition of our rabbis to share this prayer at the conclusion of a period of study, a book of the Bible, a tractate of the Talmud. In each other's presence, they had learned, they had lived, they had argued, they had debated, and as they were preparing to part company, they shared a prayer that basically acknowledges the great mystery at the heart of life, that we are here at all, that we are able to comprehend, that we encounter others whose love and wisdom likewise is shared with us. It all seems to be so happenstance, but maybe there's a greater plan. We don't know for sure. But this prayer, the rabbi said, is something we're going to say. God is beyond all that we can imagine. The world is beyond truly our comprehension. And the universe continues to expand in a way that we fully do not know, but we are here to know this at this point. And so we will share this prayer because we don't know when our paths will cross again. What begins as a prayer at the conclusion of a period of study becomes a prayer shared at the conclusion of one's life, for exactly all of those same reasons. In Craig's presence, we lived, we loved, we laughed, we learned, we argued, we debated, we danced, we celebrated. And in those occasions, there were blessings and there were opportunities, and we were grateful to be able to share them in Craig's presence. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Ulalmei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shemei d'kudesha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May we all find strength and courage from those who gather by our sides. And may we find through God's eternal presence a source of hope, courage, and above all, shalom, peace. And let us all say, Amen. This concludes our memorial service for Craig Willford. In a moment, we will dismiss to our social hall. I'll invite that we allow the family to proceed first to their tables. We will all go to the tables. There are salads on the tables that we may start eating. I share a blessing here, giving us the opportunity to do that. In Judaism, the blessing before you eat is very short. It praises God who brings bread forth from the earth, but it's not bread that grows in the earth, it is wheat. Strange prayer, this. But again, our tradition is trying to capture the essence at the heart of life, that we are partners with God in the process of creation. God gives us the raw ingredients, wheat. We turn that into bread. God gives us our personality, our lives, and through our actions and through our deeds, we likewise turn those into blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon. We praise you, our Creator, for bringing bread forth from the earth. B'tei avon. We'll allow the family to dismiss first to their tables. We will follow into the room behind. Again, find a place to sit. Salads are already on the table. And then we will invite the family members through the buffet line first.